Welcome into an episode of the Turn Golf Podcast. I'm Andrew Petters. I got Joe Nicely here. We've got the Tennessee Vols gear on. We're in the College World Series as we speak.
Not looking good. Not looking good, sir.
A pretty generous strike zone up there in Omaha this week. But everybody's got to play it. So let's look here. Last time I seen it, 2-0, top of the eighth. We got 6 outs left, looks like. We're the home team. They got 2 on, no outs in the top of the eighth. So that's not looking good for the home for the Tennessee Vols. Anyway, let's talk U.S. Open, Joe. Wyndham Clark takes home his first major, second win in just a few weeks, actually, but second win on the PGA Tour as well. Everybody's talked about the course. We know the alleged 23,000 tickets, 14,000 were corporate tickets. The other 9,000 were for patrons, for the general public. Apparently the membership or other corporations bought up the other 4,500 and burned them. Horrible viewing tournament. Really the only negative about golf for me was that the few holes where the drivers, if you land in the fairway, they were funneling to the same place. That was pretty. That's the only thing really I had dislike. And then they got very unlucky with the dense, what they called, which we heard it, no less than 3,000 times this weekend, marine layer, which drastically softened the golf course for periods of time throughout the tournament. Other than that, I thought the tournament was a huge success. 11 under, 10 under, whatever won. I know we like to see, 3-4 under, 3-4 over win, but is what it is. So I mentioned a couple of the headlines there, Joe. Just give me your thoughts on what the U.S. Open did this year.
Yeah, man. Like you said, the holes where all the balls just funnel the same place. It's just a bad golf hole. That's like number 8 at the Brook.
No matter where you hit it, it's going to be within a 14-yard period.
It's going the same place. So I think, some things you touched on, man. I think the event as a whole was disappointing. Just because of the you mentioned the ticket situation at LACC. Pretty disheartening, honestly. I think it's the most corporate U.S. Open we've ever seen, which we know that's kind of where our world and certainly where golf is headed, especially with this merger. But at the same time, especially for a U.S. Open, really kind of disheartening not to see more fans there and not to see, availability to even be there. So that was frustrating. I think the golf course is a better golf course than it kind of showed itself to be this week. As you mentioned, kind of got unlucky with marine layer that softened up the golf course. I think the USGA is kind of changed and shifted a little bit with how they're setting these U.S. Opens up, and that's something we're going to see, going forward. There for several years, they walked that tightrope between kind of maybe losing control of the golf course and making it extremely difficult. And I don't feel like they're comfortable walking that line like they used to be. So I think we're going to kind of see a change, a shift. We've already seen it in how these golf courses are set up. As far as a winner, I think Wyndham Clark's a very worthy winner. We've talked about him on this show, AP, and know he's a quality player. That's always had a ton of talent. He's finally starting to put things together this year. So certainly deserving win by him. He played great, hung on tough. But again, disappointing for golf fans, who are by far and wide pulling for a Rory McIlroy win, pulling for a Ricky Fowler win. You even feel like a Scotty Scheffler win is, kind of historical as far as the type of player we think he's going to be. So from a fan perspective, sorry to Wyndham Clark, deserving winner, but kind of a bummer to watch as a fan. So come away from the U.S. Open with mixed feelings, man. Certainly not the best major we've seen in a while, but some interesting golf, an interesting golf course, and we move on. We got a good golf tournament this week, and it's hard to believe we only got one major left this year. AP.
Yeah. Yeah, before we move on to the Travelers this week, like you said, great tournament coming up. Definitely one of our top events that we have on our calendar for the avid golf fan. Is it fair to say that if we look back over the last decade, the PGA of America is schooling the USGA on running golf tournaments?
Yeah, man, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. The PGA's had a lot of really good events, and the PGA kind of has an advantage. I mean, let's just be honest. The PGA kind of has an advantage where we don't expect as much. We've kind of always viewed it as the little brother, kind of the fourth on the list. I think that's fair to say that that's how most golf fans view the PGA. So those expectations are kind of lowered, and they don't have the they don't have the pressure of kind of trying to live up to what viewers think it should be, like a U.S. Open does. I mean, we expect the U.S. Open to be the toughest tournament, right? The toughest major. And so the USGA has to kind of live up to that, or at least tries to live up to that identity on a regular basis, where the PGA doesn't have that. And so I think the PGA's been really sneaky good lately. I've had some cool golf courses. I know you did as well, AP. Loved Kiowa. Just a great venue. We've seen Bethpage, then Oak Hill this year. Some really cool golf courses. So yeah, man, I think the PGA has really kind of been sneaky good over the past 6 to 8 years.
Yeah, interesting enough, I saw where the you can actually pull this up on the USGA website, the future sites, and maybe all but like 3 years are full for the next 15, and Bethpage is nowhere to be found. It's pretty sad there. And my theory all along is that, I've said it on this podcast, I've tweeted it out, I've said anybody to listen, that it would be really to make these events more distinct. We've got the Masters, which is, I guess, the national every year. We got the Open Championship, which is in the 6-7 course rotation over in Scotland and England, and then we've what if the PGA Championship is on a private track, US Open's on a public track? That would distinct those events throughout. But obviously, my say means nothing. But I think PGA has had some great events. Last year's, this past year's, you go back to the Bethpage year, that's where Brooks won. They've had some good events. That's just all there is to it. So, and then when Justin
speaking of that schedule, AP, LACC's on there again, I believe, for 2039, which 15 years away or whatever, 60. Yeah, but
I'll be 55 then. I'll be 55 then and worry about putting my 17th child through college. So I'll probably won't be watching golf by then.
Do you think it's held there? Do you think we'll see another U.S. Open at LACC after this?
I think it's pretty obvious. The USGA has no care whatsoever of what the general public thinks. They just care about what the 12 peoples with ties and the floppy hats say inside those meetings. I can't stand a guy in a suit and a hat. That just doesn't. I can't do it. Suit, a hat, and dog tags on. I can't. His credentials. I can't get on board with that look. It's mainly infuriating for me. That's the kind of hats.
Does that have anything to do with maybe some rulings that have come down over the past?
Just I think it has to do with the whole deforestation of golf courses movement back in the 90s, and let's mow the rough down. I think we had an 80-year period where the greatest designer in American history, Donald Ross, designed, 500-600 golf courses. And over an 80-year period, these trees are going to mature and it really turn these golf courses in the South, especially the South and the Northeast, into really fantastic golf courses. And the USGA decided to not only tell people, but then get advisement groups to go out and tell country clubs that they just cut down every tree they have for maintenance issues, and to bring it back to the original design when they cut down all the trees to sell the lumber. I just think it's ridiculous. And so, and I grew up in a tree, you know, holes were framed in by trees era, 80s, 90s. That was what golf was in the South. So anyway, that's probably number one. And number two, I didn't like any decisions that Mike Davis made at the helm of the USGA. And then, they held a 5-hour press conference when they released their marketing plan for many to one, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And a waste of my Saturday when I sat down and watched. I was really fired up thinking they were going to list all these new events, and they come out and talked about a marketing scheme for many one. And then luckily the meme world took over and turned it into a Tiger Woods meme. So anyway, it's just disheartening. So, moving on from that topic, I will say one thing about Wyndham Clark. It's pretty obvious now that we're getting to see him on mainstream in the leaders groups and stuff like that. Next World Talent hits the ball far enough where he has a distinct advantage over a lot of people in the field, 90% of the field. And you really felt like as good as Ricky played all week, he was definitely, obviously, the least talented of the four there at the top at the end. And it looked like he had no more bullets in his gun. Is kind of where I'm at on that. And my buddies were like, golly, how many tournaments are you going to win? And you kind of always get on this little path like, oh my gosh, is Rahm ever going to lose again? Or is Brooks ever going to lose? Is Scotty ever going to lose? And now it's like, man, this Wyndham Clark guy, he might ever lose again. And I'm like, you know what, guys, let me just say this to them. I was like, guys, Wyndham's been doing this for a long time, playing exactly like he played in the U.S. Open. Except, let's be honest, he had like two of the most all-world up and downs. One was a save for bogey, and one on 11 was that par up and down that he almost holed from 30 yards left of the green. That 69, 70, whatever it was he shot, could have been a 74. And I think 68 to 74 was a very thin line on Sunday anyway, with where the pin positions were and the decisions that you made. So, Wyndham Clark, world talent. If he limits his mistakes, he's tough to handle. So that's what I'll say about him. Great champion, very deserving, and 2-putt on 18 was next level with that kind of pressure. 60-something feet or something, 58 feet. That's a great pressure pack way to handle it and take care of business. So, yeah, Joe Nicely, lead editor for Rotoballer.com. Joe, before we get into this DraftKings slate in this tournament, talk to us a little bit about Rotoballer.com.
Yeah, man, we still got a lot of golf left. So want to encourage you to head over to Rotoballer.com for the rest of the season. You can use our promo code TURN to sign up for our PGA Premium package. That'll take you through the rest of the year. We still got, of course, the Open Championship, got the Vegas Cup playoffs, a lot of amazing tournaments, just like this week's Travelers. So I want to encourage you to go over there, check out our staff. Spencer Aguiar was on Wyndham Clark last week. Spencer does a Vegas report, does all kinds of content actually for us. He has his own tier over there, guys. So if you're a fan of Spencer Aguiar at Tee Off Sports, you can sign up to get every article that he does, as well as Discord access. A lot of people are loving that this year. Something new we added, and more new stuff will be coming in 2024, man. We're always looking for ways to improve. So hope you'll go over and check out rotoballer.com. Use our promo code TURN. That'll help us out. And we think you'll really like the content, get a lot out of it.
Thank you, Joe Nicely, lead editor, rotoballer.com. Best place in the world for your daily fantasy needs. Moving on this week, learned something new tonight, Joe. Travelers Championship, obviously same birth year as my dad. He's Eddie Darts, 1952. So it had its 70th birthday last year. Played at the TVC River Highlands, and we'll get to that in just a second. But this tournament held in Cromwell, Connecticut. Second most attended golf tournament on the regular season PGA Tour, only behind the Phoenix Open, Waste Management Phoenix Open. That was a surprise for me. Not that didn't know this tournament was great. I just did not know that it held the second most visited golf tournament. Like I said, this tournament's been around for 70 years already. And for the first 3 years, it was played at Weathersfield Country Club. But 1984, it moved to the TPC River Highlands. This is just a great event. There's not much we can say bad about it. TPC River Highlands, par 70, 68.52. And Joe, you might know this a little better than I do. Is this the shortest course that we play all year?
It's right there, AP.
Yeah, it's gotta be. It's gotta be.
Yeah, it's right there. 6,841 yards. One of the shorter tracks on the schedule.
Yeah. So we got bent grass.
A couple others. Go ahead.
Yeah, bent grass throughout pretty much the whole golf course, with probably some poa annua seeping in when we got this cooler weather. I don't know what the temperatures have been like for the last month up there, but if we haven't got really hot weather, that poa annua is going to be all over the place. So those late afternoon rounds might get a little, they can cause some problems if the poa annua blooms up. Kentucky Bluegrass Fescue 4-inch plus rough, which is should be a pretty good test, I have to imagine, for them up there. That's why we see these 6,800 yards par 70, but we're still going to see somewhere in the teens win this golf tournament, whether it be 15 to 20 under. We all know course design Pete Dye. This is classic Pete Dye design. We had some art renovation help from Bobby Weed in 1989. Surprisingly, average fairway width and landing areas are about 30 yards. Last year we added a new tee box on 17. Yeah, just like I said, other notes in here is that these cooler nights and mild temperatures, the grass doesn't heal as well. So if we ever have some like funky weather up there, courses like this with this kind of weather are going to suffer in the 2 week to 6 week time period. But this tournament, man, it's Bombers have had success though, Joe, even though it's a typical Pete Dye design, which we know is they get position off the tee, and it's the second most Pete Dye designs or second shot golf courses. But if you look historically in this tournament, guys that hit it far have had a huge success. We're going to say these names right here: Stuart Sink, Hunter Mahan, JJ Henry, Phil Mickelson, Bubba Watson. They accounted to the 6 victories over the last 10 years. They all had it hit it a long ways compared to their peers at the time. And we know Bubba Watson won 3 times here. Let's see, how many times did Phil win? Phil just won once or multiple times? Phil won twice. In the more recent years, Xander, Harris, Dustin, long hitters. Ches Reavie is a second shot specialist. So Kevin Strillman, second shot specialist. Russell Knox, great ball striker. And George Spieth whenever he was untouchable. So that's kind of like the more recent history, along with a little bit of dated history there when it talks to Bombers. I know, Joe, this is a top 3 event for you. So talk about the Travelers just for a second.
Yeah, man, I always love the Travelers. It's we're going to see a lot of birdies, as you mentioned, probably going to fall somewhere in the teens. We've not seen 20 under par or better in the last decade. So more than likely we're going to see something in the teens. Although I will say, AP, it's something we'll talk about in just a minute. Strongest field we've ever seen for the Travelers. It's an elevated event. So this field is stacked. But you mentioned really kind of intriguing mixture of bombers and shorter hitters. And this is one of those, we talk about a handful of times a year, AP, where, kind of the whole field's in play with just being a little over 6,800 yards. We can't really cross anyone out, at least not for distance reasons. A lot of forced layups off tees here. A couple guys you mentioned, a Ches Reavie, a Russell Knox, Kevin Strillman. We've seen these guys play well and win here. Brian Harmon, a guy we'll talk about, one of the shorter hitters on tour, has got amazing course history here this week. So one of the weeks where I'm willing to kind of throw distance out the window. Obviously, always a little bit of an advantage, but something I'm going to weigh certainly less this week. So par 70, you got to take advantage of the par fives. Um, there's only two of them, so you absolutely it's crucial that you score on those. Looking for guys that can find fairways. Like I said, a lot of these tee boxes, these guys are forced to lay up, so they're not taking driver anyway. What we really want to dial in on is approach play, AP, which can be a lot of weeks, but definitely this one, iron play is kind of going to be everything, as well as position off the tee and making putts. So that 150 to 175 range feels crucial. We see an uptick in approach shots from that range this week. So that's something I'll be looking at. But yeah, man, I love this tournament. It's just fun. Always look forward to the Travelers. So excited to dive into this one. Got a really good field this week.
Yeah, like you mentioned, strongest field ever. I hadn't even looked it up on the world rankings at the how much points are a lot of this. I imagine it's going to be a lot. And then, like you said, purse is up almost 250% from last year. 8.3 million, I think 20 million. So yeah, big payday. And I don't hate it for guys that make that much money, but let's be honest, it ain't not going to be fun going from LA to Cromwell, Connecticut for a quick turnaround. So possibly some guys that went ahead and got out of there and after missing the cut and got over there and got rested. Who knows? Probably not going to play a huge effect into my thinking going in this weekend, but who knows? Coming to you on Tuesday night instead of Monday night, we're going to have a little bit more information as far as tee times and stuff. So we might touch on that, but let's just get right into the slate, Joe. 10K and above. Let's do 10K and above. 11-3 at the top, Scotty Scheffler. I feel like we do this every week, but I'm going to start with the top five. Now I know there's a huge disparity of 1,100 points from top to bottom here. 10-2 all the way to 11-3, but we got to say we're playing early. So can't lay at 10-2, Xander, Jon Rahm, Rory, Scotty Scheffler. And now if we play Scotty Scheffler, we're going to have to spend a lot of money. Same thing with Rory, but I mean, goodness gracious, I feel like Rory puts a tee in the ground as top four, right now. And you see the hunger, whether he can finish or not. You see the hunger in his eyes, and that's when we like to play Rory, Joe. So where are you at here in the top five?
I love all these guys, man. Not a great answer, but it's just kind of how it is. I mean, we continually see the cream rising to the top this year. Scotty Scheffler's having in the midst of a historical, really ball striking top year. I mean, we're going back to prime Tiger days. We talked about it on here with Tambo last week. And if that putter ever starts clicking, he's going to win the golf tournament. And we have to feel like that's going to happen sooner or later. It was one of those things where he's kind of always in the mix. When you feel like he's not playing that well, because we see a lot of missed putts on TV, but Scheffler's tee to green game is just amazing. He's improved at each of his Travelers starts, so he's kind of incrementally got better every time he's come to this golf course. Rory has played well in kind of limited trips here. It's kind of an every other year thing for Rory, but he's played well. Solid finishes, man. You have to wonder. Rory's kind of a different animal. Most guys you would think would be very down after coming so close last week. Rory, we've kind of seen him bounce back in spots, after disappointments. So it's he's an interesting play this week, and I may be a little more likely to play him than I would be another guy that went through what he went through last week, because I think he's capable of bouncing back. Jon Rahm, just been a little bit off, man. Things just haven't been quite as tight on and around the greens. That's why we're seeing some kind of mediocre outings for him, at least by his standards. But certainly, like Scotty, capable of just getting things going and blowing this thing out. Xander, defending champion, obviously played well here last year. Patrick Cantlay, the course history is amazing. He was right in the mix in this thing last year, AP. I don't know if you remember. Had a really bad, just a weirdly bad final round last year. I think he shot like 76. But he and Xander were kind of battling for this thing last year. I don't know if you remember, but Really fun third round. Those guys going back and forth, and then Cantley just kind of fell out in the final round last year. But look for Cantley and Shoffley to both be right in the thick of this thing. This is right down Patrick Cantley's turnpike. We've seen him play well in these non-major events, and he loves this golf course. So, if I'm picking a favorite up here, I don't think he's the best player, but I think my favorite might be Patrick Cantley up at the top.
Yeah, so something like you said, something kind of just seems off with Rom, and makes me wonder, is this kind of when we kind of, I feel like with Rom, to be successful on DFS, you kind of have to play him when nobody else is playing him. And so I think maybe this might be a week where we just take a stab. I know his current form is not nowhere close, but I feel like he's going to be completely overlooked because it makes a lot more sense to play a Scotty, a Rory, Patrick, or a Xander over him, in my opinion, because you're getting good value with Patrick and Xander has played pretty decently. And there's nothing we can say bad about Rory and Scotty except, if they each make one more putt a day, they win every tournament they've played in this year. So, or at least the last 2 months. So, anyway, in saying that, I don't know what to do up here, and I'm probably going to hold out for a little bit before I make a decision. But to me, and I know he's a defending champion, so makes it a little bit kind of ignorant for me to say is that the right term, but kind of leaning towards Xander at that 10-4. So I don't really know though.
Doesn't feel like there's a bad play up here this week, man.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like the. Of course, it's it's not a huge surprise at this price point, but it just feels like there's not a bad play above 10K, and it might be one of those weeks where I kind of let, as the week progresses a little bit, kind of let ownership dictate where I go because I do like all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, a lot of times I'll kind of lean towards the lower on guys. I think we'll see. Cantley and Shoffley both be extremely popular. Scotty will, of course, be popular. So I think that should leave us probably choosing between Rory and Rom, who are both obviously elite players, but each kind of have their own personal issues going. But I would be totally fine, if it's going to be a noticeable ownership gap between those two guys and the other three. I'll be just fine going in that direction. So probably that ownership kind of dictate what I do up there. I'm interested to get your thoughts on the 9Ks, man. It's an interesting range. A little surprised to see some of these guys up here. What are you thinking in the nines, man?
I love the 9K range just overall, and that's why I'll probably be a little bit more conservative than the 10K range, Joe. Fitzpatrick, Fowler, Wyndham Clark, Fleetwood, Morikawa, Finau, Hovland. Love all those players. Don't know if I love all those players in Cromwell, Connecticut, especially when we get to it, we're going to talk about the 8K range, Joe, and to me, I love those guys more than the 9K range. So love all these players. Morikawa gets the putter going, stays loose, apparently. I mean, basically felt like I never saw him on TV this weekend. And you look at his scorecard, you're like, this guy was in this tournament. Tony Finau, it's all about the putter. If it's okay, he's very competitive. Victor's Victor. So when we've already talked about Fleetwood, I just never get Fleetwood right, so I don't have an opinion on it. And Fitzpatrick, I feel like it's going to be wildly overlooked this week. So once again, I don't really have a hard case for any of these guys to play. Does Ricky just parlay how he played last week and there's no pressure this week and just plays great? That makes sense too. I could come up with a Disney story about all these guys this week. So Joe, what about your 9K range?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of narratives we can kind of follow in this 9K range. Like I said, I just feel like it's a super interesting range this week. You've got Ricky and Wyndham coming off emotional U.S. U.S. Open week last week, emotionally different for each of those. You got Wyndham Clark on a high. There's already been some pictures out of him celebrating, which great, rightly so. So you wonder where he'll be this week. He's the type of play that I would really love if he's not coming off his first major championship win. But then you got Ricky with the disappointment. Coming off LACC and kind of what transpired there. He was so super close. He had to feel super close, and then with that bad final round. Not great momentum coming in this week, but maybe, like you said, maybe the pressure's off. My tendency is to look elsewhere. I'm a Tommy Fleetwood truther. This, AP. Love playing Tommy. I keep thinking of breakthrough wins coming. This is a very stout price tag, though. 9,300. I do like the fit. I like the fit at this TPC River Highlands golf course for Tommy. He had a T13 here back in 2019. We know he's coming with a ton of momentum. We like playing guys coming off really good Sundays, and Tommy certainly had one shot 63 at LACC on Sunday, so a ton of positive momentum. You mentioned Morikawa. It seemed like he just had a lot of nice little spurts last week. Maybe some things are starting to fire. Over his last two starts, he's gained 10 combined strokes on approach. I like to see that when those irons are clicking. We know how dangerous he could be. And then you mentioned Tony and Vic, just super solid guys. Victor Hovland had kind of a quiet week, but we know what type of year he's having as far as consistency. So I like Victor. I like Colin Morikawa, and I like Tommy. Although the price tag is a little bit scary, I'm going to have to keep an eye on his ownership too. I think we're going to have a lot of folks on the Fleetwood bandwagon this week, AP.
Yeah, I can see that. And like I said, I'd never get him right. So I don't want to speak on him because of that. Fleetwood, though, 63 could have been about 58. It's good to see hit it. Now, he did make some bombs there in the middle of the round, so you can't complain. But that putt on 18 was criminal, Joe. That was a criminal. That looked like – yeah, I ain't going to throw our boy under the bus, but that looked like somebody falling short maybe possibly on his first ever 79, a 4-footer on 18 at the Brook.
We were trying to steer it home, baby, at the end of the round, and you could see we were just trying to steer it in. We're like old Cougar on Top Gun, just trying to get that thing landed. So and that's kind of been the knock on Tommy, man, as far as why he hasn't maybe won yet on the PGA Tour when we feel like he should. We saw some leaks down the stretch in Canada a couple weeks ago, so that's the only thing. The drawback, I've seen him at 9,300, although I do think he's a great play. The 8K range is, man, we got some guys that are playing some bad golf. Really good players that are playing really bad golf in the 8Ks. So it's maybe the most interesting range to me this week, AP. What do you do here, man? You got Max Homa coming off a very disappointing miscut on a golf course where a lot of people really liked him. JT maybe playing the worst golf. I don't know if I want to say of his career, but certainly that we've seen recently. Just a horrible outing last week. Does he get things back on track? You have to feel like it's an ultimate buy low spot for JT if you have any type of faith in him. Sung Jae's been super quiet. Cam Young's been bad. J-Day's been bad since the win. Changed irons last week, and it's just a mess for him right now. Tagala has cooled a bit. He had a runner-up here last year, so I think a lot of people maybe find their way back to Tagala this week. And Tom Kim's starting to show some life. Siwoo's been popular. So anyway, man, do you have a favorite here in the 8Ks or any thoughts on these guys that are really a lot of them playing bad golf right now?
So if I take the storyline here, Joe, I'm trying to pull up something so I can get some math on this, but what if you started here in the 8K range and we know maybe mindsets are at all-time lows for a number of these guys, but what if you took a Hideki, Young, JT lineup start, 2 years ago or 18 months ago, you'd have been like, that's, three of the top 8 prize players in a major. And
6 months ago, man.
yeah,
I mean, at the start of this year, I mean, we're what, 4 or 5 months removed from Max Homa being maybe the hottest player in the world on the West Coast swing. Um, Sung Jae
yeah.
is well known for his consistency. Same can be said for JT. I mean, it's tempting. It's
Let me just tell you
tempting.
this, Joe. If I told you could put a lineup together, had Siwoo Kim, Hideki Matsuyama, Justin Thomas at Cromwell, Connecticut, the TPC River Highlands for the Travelers in 2023, and have $8,200 left, you'd say I want 100% of my lineups those 3 guys. Am I wrong?
No,
So,
no, you're
and strangely enough, Hideki doesn't have much history here. I think this golf course actually sets up great for him if he can figure it out. And another thing too, so I'm big Hideki this week for that purpose. Don't know if he's back or I'm not going to say that. But actually he hasn't looked very good at all, really. I'll be honest, other than the since his Masters victory, let's be honest, he has not had a lot of success since then. Cam Young, seemed to like go off the planet. What was he, like 176 on tour and putting at one time this year? Played pretty good last week, Joe. A couple rounds under par on the weekend. So here's the problem though. We got really no history with Young or Matsuyama in this event. So I'm scratching J Day. I love Tagala, but scratching him here. Lowry seems to be the more of the guy I'm gonna play when the tournament's held at 8 under. I do like Tom Kim, however. Siwoo, JT, Matsuyama, out on Sanjay, excuse me. And I don't really know what to do with Homa. He does not have a lot of success in the Northeast. So for that reason, probably scratching him, even though he makes sense. But he makes a lot of sense to me on more traditional style golf courses where we've got, iron play and par 5 scoring kind of makes a lot of sense because he doesn't miss a lot of long shots. So if his driver in the fairway, 5 wood or 3 iron on a green, 2 putts or around the green, gets up and down, that's a huge advantage for a golfer like of his caliber. So Cam Young, Siwoo Kim, JT, Tom Kim in the 8K range, and that's kind of going against the grain on recent play, but the talent's just there. And if you put 2 of those guys in your lineup and every lineup you got and mix and mingle them, I think 2 of these 4 make some noise. Hard to think that we could have 4 or 5 guys in this range or the 9K range, and you're not going to have one of the top 5, 2 of the top 5 guys finish top 5 in the tournament. So we've got to figure that out as well. But I like 2 guys. I thought playing those 4 guys, mix and matching 2 of them in every lineup I got.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's some really cool things you can do with ownership this week, man. It's a bet against recent form in a lot of spots. But there's there's a lot of leverage out there to gain if you're looking at it from that perspective, maybe a large field GPP. I think there's a lot of cool things you can do, especially in this 8K range and the 9K range. There's a lot of ways to get different with guys that are historically really good players and maybe not playing their best golf right now. The 7K range, a lot of guys that you feel like you want to target, that you kind of feel like you know what you're getting this week. We mentioned how deep this field is. That really starts showing up in the 7K range. A lot of guys that you just would feel really comfortable with, at least I do at first glance. We're talking about good course fits with some good course history in there, mixed in with some good recent form. Just off the top of my head, and at the kind of the top of the 7K range, AP Russell Henley really jumps out to me. I think he'll be a popular play. I'm a Henley apologist. I'm kind of always there. So I'm always bummed when he kind of gets some steam, which I feel like he will this week. Just very, very quietly playing excellent golf this year. Harris English is inconsistent, which scares me a little bit, but I do like the upside here. Obviously, won here 2 years ago in that kind of marathon playoff. We saw him pop last week at the U.S. Open, and we've seen him play well in spurts this year. So I think you can definitely look at Harris English. Corey Connors on paper is an excellent fit, a terrific ball striker. Minwoo Lee is a player. I think we'll see a lot of people jumping on Minwoo Lee. People like to roster him, especially coming off a big week at the U.S. Open last week. I think you'll see a lot of people there. I mentioned in the opener, Brian Harman's course history is amazing. 4 top 8s, 4 finishes inside the top 8 over the last 5 years. So it's just ridiculous course history for Brian Harman if you're a course history buff. So there's a lot to like, man. And as we work on down, we'll talk about a couple more. Is there anybody between like the 75 to 8K range that you really like this week, Andrew?
Yeah, I like a number of these guys. Once again, I can never get Connors right. For like 18 months straight, I said he fit in every week. I couldn't make a reason not to play him. So for that reason, I'm out on him. I'm a Adam Scott fan, but this week, he's not going to have a huge advantage like he has in other events that he plays in. I do like Henley, like Keegan actually on here, and could he get majorly overlooked? Yes. Minwoo Lee is.
We've seen some good finishes from Keegan here as well. He's popped on this golf course a couple times.
Yeah, and Minwoo Lee obviously is going to get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. He's the threat every week, no matter what the course fit is. Just very streaky player. Probably be out on Harman this week, just from the main reason is that he's had great course history here, but this is the strongest field we're ever going to see, so naturally that's going to decrease, and he's probably going to get a ton of ownership because of his great history here. So we just do around that, and I'd rather plug in like a Ben On or Matt Kuchar there that's probably going to be wildly overlooked in this range, and hope one of them pops. That's me for that. For this range, does that make sense at all, Joe? Well, like those two, throwing those two out there. And we've seen Ben On, just reel off top 25s this year, taking a little bit more serious. So
I'd also a guy that we've seen play really well this year, guy we like on this show. He's kind of been out of sight, out of mind because he's not played in a couple of weeks. Steven Yeager. I think that's an interesting pivot from Harman, from Minwoo Lee there. You never have to talk me into to fading the chalky Brian Harman. Looks right now like his ownership's around 12 or 14%. That's getting up there pretty strong. So I'm always willing to look to jump off him as the chalk, even though the course history is amazing. So I really like your mindset there, AP. Some young guys that I'm really interested in as we get on down into the 7s. I'd like to hear your favorites, but just to toss a couple names out there. Ludwig Aberg, we've seen what he's capable of. Just recently turned pro, played really well in Canada. He's in the field this week. Austin Eckroat, I think, is going to get a ton of steam. Really talented player that's coming into his own. I think he's finally kind of starting to show that promise that he showed at Oklahoma State. A lot of people were really high on him coming out of college, myself as well, and he kind of stumbled a little bit coming out of the gate, but he's really starting to find his game and get comfortable on the PGA Tour. We saw that over the last several weeks and last week at the U.S. Open. So I think you'll see a lot of people looking to play Austin Eckroat because he's an explosive player. Eric Cole's become a favorite for a lot of folks. He's remained really consistent and a very reasonable price tag this week at $7,300. So I think you'll see a lot of people gravitate towards what they feel is safety in Eric Cole. And then I'll touch on just a couple more guys down here. AP Andrew Putnam, Justin Suh, Taylor Moore. Kind of surprised to see him at this price tag. Seems like there's a lot of Jordan Spieth, Taylor Moore crossover. I don't know if that's just Copperhead kind of popping out at me, but we've seen Spieth play well here before, so I'm kind of interested in Taylor Moore, even though it's been a little bit quiet. I think the ownership's going to be priced to move there. And then Sam Bennett, the amateur. We've talked a lot about Aberg. Sam Bennett's kind of sneaking up on a lot of people. Played really well at the U.S. Open. Had a bad third round, I believe. fell down the leaderboard, but I think he's a talented kid. He's a grinder. This course should suit him pretty well. So give me your thoughts, man. Any of these young guys you like? Another thing, shout out to Travelers. Before I kick it to you, AP, the Travelers are one of the best events about getting these young guys in, talented young players. They always use their sponsors exemptions very, very wisely. I think a lot of guys remember that kind of throughout their career and try to come back here. That's one thing that's kind of kept this tournament alive. So shout out to the Travelers for always getting a lot of talented young players in. Can't hear you, buddy.
Absolutely, Joe. I'm on board with what you said about the Travelers and the field year in year out and trying to get great young player, new on the rise players. To me, though, the after seeing this 9K, the 8K, in the high sevens, the low sevens is wildly mediocre for me. Not saying there isn't great players here. It's just pop power right there. Except for, I will say this: I'm gonna have my eye on Justin Suh for a while. This guy hits it so good. It's fun to watch him play. Really kind of thought he would make some move on Saturday, and just struggled there on the back nine on Saturday. So, but underwhelming for me on the lower 7K, except for I do like Eric Cole quite a bit, 7,300. Just consistently top 30 every week, and playing well ever since he made most of his opportunities. So moving on the 6K range, Joe, a lot of names we know. Not sure if we'll play many of them this week, but we might be forced to. It's pretty deep, actually, as we get on down here. Several past champions, but maybe not where their game is where we want it. But are you finding value down here in the sixes this week, or you just kind of have to pick a few just to plug in? We know Dylan Wu's been playing well at 6,600. Harry Hall played well for a few weeks, and we know sky's the limit for that guy. Nick Hardy played pretty well last weekend, Joe. Strillman has had huge success here in the past, no matter what the strength of the field was. So where are you at here in the 6K range? And then we'll get into the main event question of the evening.
Yeah, I'm to answer your question, I'm fine down here this week, man. As far as in comparison to a lot of weeks we see, I'm pretty comfortable going below 7K this week. I don't know that you have to, but I certainly think you can. I think there's some solid options, especially when we're talking about GPP stuff. Mark Hubbard, I don't know that he'll be a great GPP play because I think he's going to be extremely popular, but feels just like a great value play at 6,900. So I really like Hubbard there. Michael Kim's been playing solid golf. We know how talented Davis Riley is. You mentioned some of the vets, Kevin Strillman. You can look at. I like Sam Stevens a lot. Ches Reavie will be popular. So there's a lot of ways you can go down here, AP. No need to avoid the 6Ks this week.
So who's your dart play of the week, Joe?
Man, I should always think about this before the show. For some reason, I never do, man. I always get kind of caught up on the slate as a whole. I'll toss out Austin Eckroat. I think he'll be popular, but he's just a fun player. He's one of those guys that's fun to have in your roster because he's so explosive. And it does feel like he's getting more and more comfortable. We're just seeing a little bit more comfort, a little bit more freedom from him every week. So my dart, I'll throw out Austin Eckroat. Who you got, man? Who you think?
Man, it's just so hard because this field's so strong. It's kind of hard to go down here in the sixes and expect much, right? I think these dart plays were much easier whenever we had normal events because the guys, it's harder to find the long shots of majors, right? So now it's basically like every week's a major. But I guess if I'm kind of throwing something out there out of nowhere, like you said, should have thought about this before, right? Nobody's gonna be talking about Davis Riley, so let's throw him out there.
I like it.
Got a lot of
Like
game for this golf course. But yeah, sorry, my dog was eating on something. She's probably like gonna have diarrhea all night. It's great. So in your heart of hearts, Joe, what do you see this tournament looking like on Sunday? Who's your heart play of the week?
Man, there's so many good options up there, and so many guys I like this week. Honestly, I don't really. He's not like a player that I love, man, but just for it, it just feels like a Patrick Cantlay week to me. It's like the pressure's off. He's out. He's out of the major championship fire. Um, it's the type of tournament he wins, man. We've seen him do it, like in the FedEx Cup playoffs, beat really good fields. There's pressure, but not huge pressure. He's playing well, so I'm going Cantlay. Not necessarily a guy I'm pulling for, but something just tells me it's his type of week. What are you thinking, man?
I mean, why not? Why not a Hideki or a Cam Young, Joe? So that's kind of where I'm leaning this week is like kind of go outlandish. I mean, we're gonna get a great price on a JT and on a Pete Dye track. You kidding me? That just wildly surprising. I mean, you can probably get a Hideki on a tour event at 50-1. You kidding me? You're going to get a JT at a 40-1 or higher. It's just, it's just. I mean, I know their form's bad, so you might be like, "Hey, I'm gonna go have this." If we're making wagers, get somebody a little bit more consistent. If we're DFS wise, be a little bit more liberal this week in your selection. Is that right? That's a good term. Be very liberal and probably go off ownership, like you said. So with that being said, I really think one of these guys in the top 5 are definitely going to win. After saying all that, Cantlay, Xander, John Rahm, Rory. I'm just going to be honest. I'll be wildly surprised if Rory or Scheffler don't win.
Okay.
I mean, they got to make putts eventually, right?
Yeah. I mean, it all goes back to that, man. I mean, we can talk through the slate, which we have. I mean, I think this is a great slate, so I'm glad we spent a lot of time on it this week. Feels like we talked over some really interesting stuff, but at the end of the day, Scotty Scheffler can kind of cancel all that out if he's making putts. It feels like he's just playing so good from tee to green that it feels like he can kind of make it a moot point. If putts are falling, maybe the same can be said for Rory. I agree with you, man.
And these golf courses really don't set up for their game at all. So
it's it's kind of from a Rory, John Rahm, I don't know to the same extent as those two, Scotty Scheffler, but we know Rory's biggest weapon's the driver. Same can be said for Rahm, and that's going to be a little bit muted this week. So not the best setup for them to take advantage of their biggest strengths. So that's kind of my knock on a Rory and a Rahm. Some of these driver heavy guys, Scotty's just so solid that it seems like from tee to green, he's just gonna kind of go out there and maybe you don't feel like he plays great and he shoots 3 or 4 under. It seems like it's what he does every round. And if the putts start falling, then just look out, man.
Yes, that's yeah. Sounds so stupid to play Scotty Scheffler here, but yeah, unless fatigue's there, Scotty
Awesome.
Scheffler's pretty strong. Sam Bennett making his second professional start. Is that right? So
yeah, so I guess third start as a pro. Yeah. I think he turned pro before Canada. Played really well up there. We saw him play really well last week before one bad round. So he's an exciting player. Very slow, but he's kind of got that. I don't know, man. He kind of not really necessarily his game, but kind of almost reminds me like a Kevin Kisner or something. He's got a little bit of grit to him, a little bit of attitude. So he seems almost a Patrick Reed or something, like he's gonna try to find a way to get on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him actually. So who knows though? We'll see. Sky's the limit. I mean, really talking SEC wise, amateur golf looks pretty, or the future of professional golf. And I think maybe that little group of the Will Gordon and the Augustine, all them, those that got overlooked, and they really haven't had a ton of success yet. But I mean, we can also say Justin Suh played well. It's coming around. It took a few years, and it's a big change from collegiate golf into professional golf. But we got Sargent, we got our guy here, Caleb Surratt. We've got another junior here in Nashville, Blades Brown, which great golf name. Blades Brown won an AJGA event at Sedgefield, shot 2 under over 4 rounds at Sedgefield, which is where the Greensboro Classic is, or whatever that term is called now. Look out for him. 16 years old, went to the Sweet Elite 8 or Sweet 16 in the 4-ball match play in the USJ with his buddy from high school that signed at UT. So I think SEC wise, man, college golf is strong, and it's going to be fun to watch the future here of golf and the golf in Tennessee. And to their credit, Brent Snedeker and Scott Stallings have played a huge role in that for the growth of junior golf in the state of Tennessee. And one last shout out to my boy Ethan Whitaker. I've known him since the day he was born. I think he's 5th place in the Western Junior Amateur up in Chicago, Illinois this week after the first round. So, yeah, he's a Tennessee Chattanooga commit, by the way, which they made their second, I think, appearance in the NCAA championship this past year under their first year at the new coach, which is where also Stephen Yeager went to college. Throwing a lot of Tennessee, SEC, Southern, the Brook ties into this pod. But Joe, thanks again. Great conversation. I'm glad we took about 20 minutes out to talk about the Open, the U.S. Open Championship, and actually wouldn't mind getting together and talking about more golf-related stuff here shortly. Maybe when the season's over, that's going on, because we don't really know what's going on and haven't got to deep dive into the nonsense, and really nobody knows. They didn't bring up Jay Monahan's health condition. This is like, I feel like I'm watching a scripted show with all that. So, and we don't know what golf is going to look at. I saw today that the Tiger Rory League announced their plans to go forward, which is ridiculous in my brain to even comprehend, but whatever. But there is no doubt there's going to be more money and golf's going to be bigger for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. But we would like to hold on to a little bit of sentimental tradition within the growth of the game, right, Joe? Can we say that a little bit? I don't really know how to picture that, but yeah. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Joe, Andrew Putters, thank you, rotoballer.com. Remember, use the promo code TURN when signing up. Everybody who listens to the Turn Golf Podcast.